start today in a seated position. So today we will be doing some second chakra work, which is related to feelings of enjoyment and in general feeling good, and usually represents the color orange, the element of water, and fluid flowing movements. So getting out of, if you feel like there's been a lot of rigidity in your life, or I'm thinking like just functional, not like super lofty yoga ideas, but it's cold out, so we might be rigid. So if we can get some heat moving and some flowing movement going, we can loosen up these tight areas and then feel better. Let's start for today. Let's start with a mudra for the heart. So we'll interlace our fingers with our thumbs up, and then we can place that in front of the heart. So this helps to bring awareness to our heart area. This also relates to our second chakra, giving and receiving love, closely related to enjoyment, I should hope. An option to close our eyes if we like, and focus our attention on our breath in our chest. So imagining that we are breathing into our heart space, feeling our lungs expand and our ribs expanding side to side. Our ribs expanding front and back. And very cool fact, on a small scale, as we inhale, our heart, the volume of our heart actually increases slightly. So we may like to picture our heart growing on the inhale and then shrinking on the exhale. And we can repeat to ourselves, it is safe to give and receive love. And let's move the awareness lower. We can put this same mudra in front of our solar plexus. On our inhale, we can relax our abdominal muscles slightly to feel that belly breath. And as we exhale, we can gently pull our abdominal muscles in. We may like to say something to ourselves like, it is wonderful to work, it is wonderful to rest. Maybe we're feeling our ribs move right in the front. With our breath in, they spread out. And with our breath out, they come towards one another. And then we can take our hands down to the lowest part of our bellies. Breathing into our bellies here, letting our abdominal muscles relax on an inhale. And then drawing the lowest part of our bellies in on an exhale. So we're both soft and strong. maybe our affirmation here is, I am ready to feel good. And let's go ahead and release our hands somewhere comfortable. And there are many names for this: a 3-part breath, a cylindrical breath, a deep breath, a full breath. Let's breathe into all parts of our torso. So as we inhale, noticing that maybe our shoulders lift or movement of the collarbones, maybe feeling movement of our shoulder blades, rib cage, breathing into the underarms, lowest ribs move, maybe feeling as though there's a little bit of movement in the sides of the waist or the low back. And even though we know that our lungs don't actually physically go there, we can imagine that the breath drops right down into the pelvic bowl. Noticing the flow of breath, like the flow of water, waves crashing at the beach. We can picture the waves coming in on an inhale and going out on an exhale. And as we breathe in flow, we can be in the flow with our own lives, in the flow with our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And let's get in the flow with our own bodies. So we can go ahead and open our eyes. And we'll get some movement going. Let's start with a spinning top. So we'll start to circle our bodies here. And I know we've been sitting for a little while. You might want to readjust your legs any way that you need to. It is possible to do this with various different leg positions if you're not cross-legged on the floor. And this one may actually produce a lot of heat in the body. So this is a good one to do if it's been like it is today. Winter's last hurrah, we hope. It's cold out, we have this, rigidity in our bodies. We get some flow going and we get some heat building. I did this once. It's actually a traditional Kundalini practice to do this for several minutes. And you can really create quite a rush of heat bubbling up from the inside. I will let you know, sometimes it can be aggravating either physically or maybe make you dizzy, in which case we could do probably a smaller range of motion will be all that you need to do. But if you like it, you can do a big range of motion, you can really lean back. I know some people really love this one. And let's take note of which direction we're going and go the other direction. Checking in with how we're feeling. Are we feeling good? Do we have a sense of enjoyment or pleasure, fluidity, something that feels beneficial or positive? And if the answer is no, let's see if we can change it, move in a way that does feel good. Feeling good is something we are born to do. Okay, let's give it a couple more. And we are ready to come back through center. And let's go ahead and take it now side to side. So we can inhale one arm up and over, lateral flexion. So whichever hand is in the air, that same side of your bum, let's make sure it's still touching the floor or the mat. And let's go the other way. Whichever hand is in the air, make sure that your bum's not peeling up, it's still pressed down. And this is our flow. We can inhale to reach up, maybe imagining that our heart expands to the side, and exhale as we come down, strengthening through our core stability. Very common to be uncomfortable with an overhead range of motion in the arms, so maybe we're taking fingertips to shoulder or behind the head. Ideally, we get that lateral flexion going in the spine, and then that overhead reach, make it work for you. We'll go once more each way. And once we're ready to come back through center, let's make our way into child's pose. So we can swing the legs around behind. And sometimes it's helpful to mention, position yourself in a way that you can see me well. So usually the easiest way is actually if you have your hands where I am and I stay sideways so you can see me a little better. And then we lower our bodies down towards the floor. You may like the knees quite wide, you might like the arms bent. And let's settle in for just a moment. Let's breathe into the back of the body. So we know that that's not literally where our lungs are, but that's where we can feel movement on an inhale. Maybe we're feeling the body lift slightly on an inhale and then lower slightly on an exhale. So we're working with the flow of our breath and the movement that results throughout the rest of the body. And we'll come up to all fours. And we'll be here for a little while, so let's come into a pretty solid position. So we're either spreading our fingers wide and putting our body weight into our fingertips and our knuckles, or if it's more comfortable for the wrists, we could come onto a fist instead. But let's go ahead and we'll take our hearts in a circle. So we'll start with the rib cage. We're dropping the chest down like cow pose, out to one side, up through cat pose, and then over to the other side. And it may be very rigid as you start, kind of figuring out where all these parts and pieces are and how they move together, but then hopefully we get into more of a fluid rhythm. And let's note which way we're going, probably just as soon as we get it. And let's go the other way. Ribs side, back, other side, and bottom. And you may notice spots that are particularly tight or creaky. And a good rule of thumb with that is to move more slowly through the tight spots. And the loose spots probably don't need as much attention. Now, as we keep this circle going, let's notice what's going on with the tailbone. It might be doing its own small circles, kind of as a mind of its own. And let's come back through center with the ribs. And we're going to start to move just the tailbone. So it was probably doing a little bit of movement. Let's go ahead and focus the movement on just the tailbone. So we take our tails in a circle, which may feel like might feel like a hula hooping movement for you. If that is a helpful descriptor for it, or you might feel like you're drawing a circle with your tailbone. In Pilates, they talk about pelvic clocks, moving the pelvis in, to 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and back to 12. Might be easier to take the knees a little wider apart. And if this is an area, that's very tight or uncoordinated, let's be realistic about how much you've ever moved like this in your life before today. And if the answer is never, well, then we'll be realistic about how fluid it will be. Let's go ahead and switch sides. Might take a second to figure out which way you're going. Consciously go the other way and then get that movement going. And being compassionate with ourselves if this is a new movement. And if you do a lot of movements like this, you've done a lot of pelvic clocks in Pilates, or you're a big fan of Zumba, then I would challenge you probably to keep it less of a big movement and more of a controlled movement. Often that happens if you've done a lot of this circling movement, that the inclination is to make it really big and like, look how far I can go, but actually it's really healthy for the spine and the pelvis to be also controlled with the movement. So a small movement might be beneficial. Alrighty, we will bring it back through center. Let's find neutral. So we've just done lots of freeing movement, and to balance it out, let's go in the opposite direction. We'll make our backs like a tabletop. And without moving the spine, let's reach the right hand forward and the left leg back, and we'll just pause and hold for some strength and stability, knowing that we are both soft and strong, dynamic and stable. We'll go ahead and switch sides. And then option for a moment's rest here in child's pose, or you may prefer downward facing dog. If we'd like a little variety in our child's, we can turn our palms up. And whether you're in child's or downward dog, you might like to have some movement. Pedaling the heels, shifting the hips, turning the head or shaking the head. And we'll go ahead and come off the wrists. Let's give our wrists a little breather. We'll come into a kneeling lunge. And we'll take the right foot forward. So we always have the option to have something for stability, a wall or a chair. And if the kneecap on the floor is not going to happen, we could use a blanket, or we could come to standing. I'll leave that to you. And we'll stay more stable in our pelvis and core at this point. But we're going to shift back and forth to loosen up the hips. So we can straighten the front leg as we shift back. You might like to leave the toes up or the toes down. But as we often do with these flowing movements, make it work for you. It should feel good. We should have some kind of beneficial flowing sensation. As we come forward, probably feeling a stretch through the back of the front hip, or the front of the back hip and the back of the front leg is where we're probably feeling the stretch. You might feel it in the inner thigh or somewhere else. And yes, if we are standing, we can get the same kind of stuff happening, coming into a lunge and then rocking back. All right, let's go ahead and take our hands down, and I'll show us a little bit of an option. So we can take that right knee a little further over, maybe a couple of foot widths, and then let the knee come open. So we're gonna let the knee offset and maybe slide the back knee a little further back. So this is maybe not for everyone as a pose, but it can be quite nice. I'll show you again facing you. So the foot, rather than being between the hands, is on the outside, and then we can roll onto the edge of the foot. It might feel really good to come quite low. You might want to be up much higher, and we could always be up much, much higher with our hands on our thigh. So this is one of those, you either love it or you hate it. I know people who will do this every day for a minute, and other people who like, never gonna happen. So listen to your body, right? If it feels good, we can stay here. If it doesn't, any other variation of a lunge that you like, or even child's pose, or even just lying on your stomach gets the same kind of length in the front of the hip. Okay. So we're going to switch sides. Sometimes it can be a little awkward to come on out of this, and we'll take a little breather between sides. So again, you might like downward dog or child's, maybe cat and cow, or to come into just a seated position for a second. And then we're ready for the other foot in front. So I would suggest, if you were holding on to something the first side, to hold with the opposite hand so that we're more balanced. And when we're ready, we can flow front and back. Keeping in mind that rule of thumb, if a certain spot feels really sticky, probably move a little slower through there, or pause. Okay, this time we know what's coming. So we'll take that left foot a couple foot widths over onto the outer edge of the foot. And I always like to sneak the back knee further back just so that I can be closer to the floor. It might look like a more advanced or deeper version of the pose, but actually if you can reach the floor comfortably, it makes it easier because we have a big base of support. And if this is 100% not working for you, we could come back to that basic kneeling lunge, or we could do the same kind of position even lying on the back. Very similar to do this kind of movement, but on our backs, right? So there is always something for everyone. And as we hold these longer hold poses, there's sort of an evolution to the pose and how it feels. Noticing areas that are tight, see if they change to become tighter or looser, and being aware of the flow of breath and energy in the body. And when it feels like this side matches the first side, and it might not match perfectly, but we are going to make our way down to lie on our bellies. So take as long as you like to readjust. Again, we might like some kind of cat and cow or a little break for our wrists, but then we will meet lying on our stomachs. And we can start with a variation of crocodile or sleeping crocodile, resting our forehead down on the back of our hands. And this is another opportunity to be aware of the movement of breath in the back of the body, our back ribs. If you don't often lie down on your stomach, It might be a very different sensation to notice how light the back feels. We're used to carrying a heavy load on our back or carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. Or if we sit down, feeling weight against the back of the legs. And here, we have the opposite sensation. So maybe enjoying that for a moment here, this feeling of lightness in the back of the body, especially as we inhale. And we'll keep working with our hips. So we can do sort of like a tree pose, but on our stomachs. We'll bend one knee out to the side. We can stay here with the forehead down. We can kick the leg out into more of a 90-degree angle. We'll get a more intense stretch if we take it more like a frog leg or a 90-degree bend. And then some of us might actually like to be up on the forearms. And one isn't any better than the other. They're just slightly different variations. So even though this one might look fancier, I actually feel very little stretch sensation here. And I feel more if I come back down into this sort of tree variation. You, on the other hand, may feel no sensation here, and it's not until you come up that you feel something going on. So we can tweak it out, try these different movements until you settle into a spot that feels like, oh yeah, okay, I'm accomplishing something here. And we'll go ahead and come back through center, but before we switch sides, let's take the leg that we were just stretching, and we can bend and straighten it. And it'll give us the option to either hold the leg up, or, and we haven't done too much of a warm-up for this, but you may also like to reach back for a hamstring stretch. And you may like to prop yourself up with your front arm. And since we've sort of shut off the back of our lung capacity, you'll probably notice a little bit of a flow as you breathe. In order to take a deep breath in, there's a little lift. And then in order to breathe out, there's a little drop. Let's go ahead and switch to the other side. So we can let this go. We might like to windshield wipe the legs or shake off the hips. And then when we're ready, we'll go ahead and come into our tree pose variation on the other side. So we're kicking out our opposite leg into either tree or, I don't know if you can see me, more of a 90-degree bend. We might like to be propped up or lying down, forehead or cheek. And this side might be really different than the other side. So just because you chose one variation on the first side doesn't mean that's what you need here. You might want something a bit different. And before we come out of this one, let's go ahead and bend that leg in behind. We may need to bend and straighten. And then option to leave it like this. We might still have our upper body rested, or if we want to add that quad stretch, same hand to leg. Keeping in mind we haven't done a huge warm up for the shoulders. And then we might like to prop ourselves up with the front arm. All right, and let's take notice of how our spines are feeling. Everyone will be a little bit different. Sometimes, for whatever reason, after doing this kind of back bend, you may feel that you need some extra back bend, or you may feel exactly the opposite, that you would like to round your back. So check in with how your back is feeling. Pick the one that you think you need at the moment. And then we'll go ahead and come into a butterfly position. So let's do a little bit of a different variation of butterfly. So often we pull the feet in quite close. Let's take the feet as far away as you can without the feet coming apart. So slide them forward and then stop when the feet start to come apart. We might need to lift and lower the knees a little. And this is actually often called tortoise pose rather than butterfly. And we can round our backs like a tortoise. It's often done with the hands underneath the legs. We can tuck the chin. We can let gravity do the work here. And let's go easy on ourselves in this one. This is one of those poses where different body proportions become very obvious. If you have really long legs and a short torso, it'll be easy to get the arms under. If you have a long torso and short legs, it's a lot tougher. Keeping in mind how much you ate for dinner as we round forward. And then making it work for you. If you're in the perfect spot, feel free to stay there. Otherwise, we can bring it in, maybe another foot length or half a foot length. So not quite a tight butterfly, but halfway there. We can flutter our butterfly wings. And again, we can come forward with a neutral spine or a rounded back, up to you. If we take a really deep breath, you might be able to feel the muscles of the back stretching or the muscles between the ribs stretching. And then our final variation, we can bring our foot about 1 foot length away from our groin. Or another way to know that we're not yanking our feet in too close to the body, if we can take 2 fingers and pull the feet in close enough. Might like to go through the same process of flapping our butterfly wings, but this time, let's push our hands down to sit tall. We'll actually lift the knees before we begin, so we have a little bit of muscular effort lifting. We could even push our hands or arms into our legs and push our legs into our arms, so we're applying even pressure, pressing down and pressing up. And you'll know this is the adjustment for you if you feel, after you let go, your inner thighs really release. It might feel so good you want to do it again too. So we're pressing up for 2 rounds of breath, 10 seconds, something like that. And if we do choose to come forward, let's come forward with a straight spine hinging from the hips this time, rather than the rounded back. Okay, and when we're ready to come out of this, yogi's choice, you might like to shake the legs out, might like to windshield wipe the legs, or something else. And let's come into a brief back bend, fingers down, and lifting the heart. And when you're ready, we'll take it all the way down to lie on our backs. And let's take a moment for awareness before we go anywhere. So how are the hips feeling? How is the breath moving? Maybe reminding ourselves that we can, of course, just stay here in a restful position, or we can move into some deeper stretches. So we haven't done any twists yet today. Let's come into a twist. So to start, let's go ahead and plant our feet. I'll go with you. So we're gonna lift our hips and shift them over to the right. And this will keep our spine a bit straighter as we drop our knees to the left. And then you may have a personal favorite kind of twist. So this is our basic twist. We could also take a fist between our knees. Some people like a straight leg twist. Some people like the bottom leg to be in line with the spine. Some people like to hang on to the top leg. Our right hand in this case is free to come out to the side or kind of up and away on a diagonal. And we can leave the head neutral or turn it either direction. Conventionally, we turn the head towards the right on this side. And let's see how much work we can give over to gravity. Try softer. Less is more. And let's take one more breath, noticing the flow and expansion of our torso. And we are ready to take it to the other side. Coming back through center, readjusting ourselves. All right, here we go. We lift the hips, we take them to the left, knees drop to the right. And then we're free to do any little modifications. Maybe our right hand to the left knee. Maybe one or both legs straightens. Maybe we take a fist between or under the knees. And our left hand is free to come out to the side or up on the diagonal. We'll start to make our way back through center. And then you may feel the need for some movement. So in yin yoga, it's often called digesting the pose. And I think that's a perfect way to put it. We need a little something to sort of let it pass. So maybe knees to chest or a single leg to chest. You might like to straighten both legs. Maybe a long stretch. And let's finish with half a happy baby. So often we do both legs together, but there's benefit to doing one at a time as well. So let's go ahead and draw the right knee into chest, drawing belly to thigh. The pressure of our thigh on our belly may help with a literal digestion as well. And then we can extend our knee to about 90 degrees, like we are stamping our foot on the ceiling. And then let's play with it to find a good level of sensation. So we can hold behind the thigh. We can hold the ankle, one or both hands. We can hold the heel or the foot. Technically, I think we're supposed to hold the outside of the foot and work to keep the foot flexed. So our ankle still looks like we're standing on solid ground. We have the muscles of our ankle working so that we're not just like yanking on our foot. And then depending on the flexibility in your hip, you may have it coming way out to the side. Some people like to pull the knee down to the floor or straighten the leg. I'm trying not to kick the closet doors. But yeah, anywhere in and around there, and then we hold. And now we have this challenge of sort of riding the edge between activity and passivity. So we have to work a little bit to hold this, but we're winding right down too, right? But there's some beauty in that, because if you still feel some restless energy kicking around inside you, you can really tense in this pose. You can kick your foot into your hand and pull your hand down into your foot and really squeeze your glutes and your abs. And if you feel the need for lots of rest and relaxation here, you can go a lot easier on the leg, being pretty limp in the pose. Let's give it a few more breaths. And again, something to digest it. Before we come to the other side, give it a big squeeze. Maybe lift up into bridge. And we're ready for our half a happy baby on the other side. So no rush to get there, but we'll go ahead and pull the left thigh into the belly, helping with our literal digestion. And actually another great way to encourage digestion, so maybe at this hour you just ate a big meal. As we come into our final relaxation, you may like to lie on your left side. So it's a common practice after a big lunch or a big dinner. Lie on the left side, and it helps technically we're using gravity to help the stomach empty from right to left, so we lie on the left side. And it can really help that heavy feeling to pass. Okay, our half a happy baby. We can let the knee come wide. We could even use the hand as like a kickstand. If we have that restless energy still kicking around, we can be quite strong with this pose. Really firmly kicking up, like we're doing a one-legged squat. Strong pull down with the upper body. Or if we don't have any restless energy left, using as little effort as possible to stay here. But it's sort of like that tense and release practice to help you fall asleep at night. If you've done it before, you squeeze, release, squeeze, release. It can help stimulate the body and burn up that excess energy. So we can get that going here. Really squeeze the glutes and the abs. Press the shoulders down into the floor. This is our last chance for effort. And again, we can do something to digest this before we move on. And we're ready for our final relaxation. So like I said, if you are digesting a big meal, you can lie on your left side in like a fetal or baby position. We can also work on opening our second chakra again, and our heart chakra again by opening into cactus arms and butterfly legs. Although this is a very open, vulnerable pose, you may feel more cozy if you do the opposite, taking the feet wide and letting the knees knock in, and then giving yourself a hug. So either one is fine, taking whichever you feel is best, lying on the side, opening or closing the body. And as usual, I will finish in a seated position. And let's come back to the breath in the heart. Maybe repeating to ourselves, it is safe to give and receive love. Breathing into the upper parts of the belly. It is wonderful to work. It is wonderful to rest. Breathing into the lowest parts of the belly. I allow myself to feel good. I accept feelings of pleasure from head to toe. And then noting in your body where you're feeling good, comfortable, where the body is happy, anywhere from head to toe. And let's keep working with this deep, full breath. And I have a reading for us on this very trendy idea these days of letting go. We're not used to letting go. We're used to hanging on for dear life. And we hang on for lots of reasons. Because something is familiar, because the past is a known commodity and the future is a question mark. Because we lack imagination and can't conceive of a future better than the past we've had. Because blankies, no matter how ragged they are, and relationships, no matter how complete or inappropriate they've become, are a comfort to us. We hang on because we've been taught that persistence is good and we should never give up. Or maybe we're afraid of the free fall, afraid of what's scary, or maybe we're afraid of coming alive as ourselves. Often this creates an identity crisis. We like to live according to our memory of ourselves. But inside us are layers and layers and layers of who we can become. If we let go of who we think we are, we can become anything we'd like to be. And whether you are seated or lying down, we can bring hands to heart. Thank you so much for joining me here today and bringing your light and your energy. And from my light to yours, namaste.